Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Welcome back to our weird world, where the embers still glow, the woods seem to lean in closer, and the legends we tell are more than just stories. They're warnings. Tonight, we travel to Staten Island, where the line between myth and man has blurred so completely, it's hard to tell which came first. This is a tale that began as a whisper in the trees, a campfire dare, and ended with real terror. This is the story of Cropsey. It always started the same way. Don't go into the woods. Stay away from Willowbrook. If you hear someone whisper your name from the trees, run. To kids grown up in Staten Island in the 1970s and 80s, Cropsey wasn't just a scary story. It was the scary story. The kind of tale that got passed around summer camps and sleepovers, dared in playground whispers, and traded like forbidden knowledge on late-night walks home. The legend? Simple, terrifying, and consistent. There was a man, a killer, a monster. He lived in the shadows of the abandoned Willowbrook State School. He stole children and dragged them into the darkness. And if you were out too late, he'd come for you next. Every kid had their own version of Cropsey. Some said he was a burned-out former janitor from the school, horribly disfigured in a fire set by cruel students now seeking revenge. Others say he was an escaped mental patient who had once been a child at Willowbrook himself. There were stories about a hooked hand, an axe, long yellow fingernails, and eyes that glowed like animal eyes in the dark. But in every telling, there were constants. He lived underground, in tunnels. He preyed on kids who strayed too far. And once he got you, you were never seen again. It was just a story, though. A boogeyman, until kids really did start disappearing. The beating rotten heart of the Cropsey legend was Willowbrook State School, a real place and one of the darkest chapters in New York's history. Built in the 1940s, it was supposed to be a progressive institution for children with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but by the 1960s it had become something else entirely, a horror show of neglect, abuse, and dehumanization. Geraldo Rivera exposed it in 1972 in a now infamous television segment. The footage he captured was gut-wrenching. Naked children rocking back and forth on filthy floors, underfed and unattended. Some were tied to beds. Others wandered aimlessly, covered in sores. The walls seemed to weep mold. Even after the exposure, Willowbrook remained open for years, its reputation festering, its buildings crumbling, its grounds littered with the wreckage of discarded lives. By the time it finally closed in the mid-1980s, it was less an institution and more of a decaying shell. But kids still dared each other to go near it, to explore its halls, and to find out if the stories were true. That's where Cropsey lived, they said, down in the tunnels, in the dark. And as the buildings rotted, so did something deeper, a fear that something had been left behind. In 1981, a 7-year-old girl named Holly Ann Hughes vanished while walking home from the corner store. Just vanished. No witnesses, no evidence, no signs of a struggle. Whispers began immediately. Then, in 1983, an 11-year-old disappeared from the Mariners Harbor Motel. She was last seen getting into a car. Some said it looked familiar, an old school bus, but no one could confirm. A year later, in 1984, Henry, a 22-year-old with a learning disability, disappeared after leaving a diner. Then, Alice, age 5. No pattern, no bodies, no answers. Parents were terrified, but the kids already knew. They'd always known. Cropsey was real. It was the summer of 1987 when everything changed. Jennifer was a sweet, trusting 12-year-old girl with Down syndrome, and on July 9th, she went out for a walk, but never came home. The community rallied, flyers went up, volunteers spread out in search parties. People combed every inch of Staten Island they could access. And one of the searchers, a retired fireman named Ed, had a hunch. He knew the legend, knew the area. He led a group to Willowbrook, to the overgrown trails and the hollowed-out buildings that had been avoided for years. That's where they found her. A shallow grave, a small body. Jennifer. And just like that, the boogeyman had a name. He was born Frank Rostam Rizicki, but the world knew him as Andre Rand. He had worked at Willowbrook in the 1960s as a janitor or an orderly, as the accounts differ. but after the institution closed, he never really left. People said he'd been seen living in the woods, in makeshift camps, and in tunnels. Some said he drove a green school bus long after he should have stopped. Others claim he talked to himself in strange tongues, that he kept journals filled with symbols, that he left offerings in the woods. And when the disappearances began, he always seemed to be nearby. He was arrested after Jennifer's body was found. Investigators dug deeper and began connecting the dots, linking him to the earlier disappearances of the other children. Not enough for murder convictions, but enough to establish a terrifying pattern. In 1988, Rand was convicted of kidnapping Jennifer, then again in 2004 for the kidnapping of Holly Ann Hughes. He was sentenced to 25 years to life, twice. But that wasn't the end. Even after Rand was locked away, people claimed to hear noises at night near Willowbrook. Strange symbols began appearing on the ruins. Teenagers exploring the buildings found odd shrines, dolls with missing limbs, animal bones arranged in patterns, and candles melted into piles. Some said Rand hadn't acted alone. There were rumors, whispers of a cult operating beneath the school grounds, using the tunnels for rituals. Even the documentary team that investigated the Cropsey legend reported being stalked through the woods while filming. They heard footsteps, voices, and even something knocking back when they tapped on tunnel walls. The scariest part? None of it could be fully disproven. To this day, you can ask any Staten Island native about Cropsey, and many will tell you, it wasn't just a story. I know someone who saw him. I dared a friend to go into Willowbrook, and he never talks about what happened. He's become more than a man now, more than a memory. He's a ghost, a fear passed down, a living nightmare woven into the identity of a place that tried to forget its own sins. And every once in a while, someone still vanishes. Legends like Cropsey are born in fear, but they survive in the silence, in the gaps between official reports and what we feel in our bones, in the places we avoid, in the woods we don't walk through after dark. This story wasn't just about a monster. It was a story about how the community created a name for something too terrible to face, a name that gave shape to the shadows. But what if the shadows don't need a name to reach for you? So if you ever find yourself near Staten Island and you hear something whispering from the trees, don't look back. And for the love of all things warm and pure, stay out of the tunnels. You've been listening to Our Weird World. If this story made your skin crawl, share it with someone brave enough to hear it. Like, subscribe, and help us keep these stories alive. Until next time, stay curious and beware the legend that walks beside the truth.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.